Hi, I'm Craig and welcome to Market Power. It is the end of the year and I thought I'd share with you some of my favorite books that I read this year. Now these aren't books, I don't even think any of these books came out in 2019, but I read them in 2019 and I really enjoyed them, and I just wanted to share with you what I learned about the world and myself as I read these books. I'm going to list these books basically in the order that I read them. They're of course not the only books I read, they're my favorite books, and I'm listing them in the order that I got them just because that's the easiest one for me. If you're interested in the books, I'm going to put a link in the description below to all the books I mentioned here. The first book that I enjoyed was Bad Blood. This was on a lot of lists last year. It's about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos and just how that great deception came to be. And it is incredible. Now, this one I didn't actually read. I was listening to it on an audiobook, and I listened to it on the way back and forth from work, and I loved those days when I was listening to it because it's such an intriguing story, and the whole time you just wonder, how did this happen? How did this happen in America? All these kind of things. They're really interesting. Economics behind what's going on there. Economics about information, about sending signals, about checking the credibility of signals. All super interesting. It was a great book. I highly recommend it. Number 2 was Netflixed. This was a book about the rise of Netflix and the competition with Blockbuster. And this book really surprised me. I picked it up because I saw a few people on Twitter talking about it. I thought I'd check it out. And I was amazed at what was going on. Like, for one, I grew up in the Bay Area and I was living in the Bay Area at the time that Netflix was rising. And I just realized that I was really out of touch. And I was in high school, and Netflix, while a rising company, wasn't the be-all, end-all. So of course, I do remember some things going on with Netflix. I have a distinct memory with the Blockbuster near my house. So yeah, I think I was a little bit aware of Netflix, but not to the extent that I realized that this was the next big thing. I could not believe that I was just so unaware of what was going on with Netflix. Another thing is that I didn't realize that Netflix was against the ropes, that Blockbuster was about to win the battle with Netflix, except for the dumb choices made by a CEO who decided that wasn't the direction they wanted to go in. Those kind of things are super interesting, and I really liked it because I had done a video earlier in the year about Blockbuster and inequality and the rise and fall of superstars, and so I was really interested in that. That's why I picked it up, and I was satisfied with what I got. My third book is Digital Gold. That was one that I got recommended to me by Joshua Gans when I interviewed him about Libra, and I was really interested in learning more about cryptocurrencies and the rise of Bitcoin. And this is definitely the book if you're interested in that kind of stuff, because it goes straight to the origins. You're learning about all the big players. It was really good for me to read this because I hadn't read it before, and I'm interested in the crypto space, but I haven't really delved into it. So getting this introduction was super helpful. And so if that's something that you're interested in, Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, I highly recommend checking out Digital Gold. It will give you the introduction that you need. A fourth book that I read was the Pixar Touch. This was a book that I picked up because I'm preparing a series on the economics of Pixar. You can actually see I've got Pixar characters that I've added up here recently. That's because I'm doing a video, it'll be out in a few weeks, going through the economics of Pixar. I love Pixar, and so I wanted to read this book. And man, this book was amazing. Another book that a lot of people like is Creativity Inc. And it's a fine book. I picked up both of these books at the same time. I read Pixar Touch first, and then I read Creativity Inc. And Creativity Inc., though a lot of people told me they love it, I was way more engrossed in Pixar Touch. I just loved the book. The rise of Pixar, the stories, like what was going on in the backstory of all these movies that they made. It was a fantastic book. I learned a ton. The economics in there are amazing. I'm going to be making a whole series about the economics of Pixar, and this book is going to be a huge foundation for it. So those are 4 of the books I've already finished, and I noticed a pattern as I was reviewing my year. I was thinking, what were the books that stood out to me, and those 4 stood out. And I read a couple of economics books, and I've realized that I've not been as interested in books about economics or by economists. I think mostly because now that I've been so far into economics that I'm just more familiar with the things that they're brought up, and I'm not 100% into them. I still pick them up, I still enjoy them, but they just don't rise to the top when I review my year. And so I was looking at those 4 books, and I realized that these were books about the history of different businesses, especially recent businesses. And I realized that pattern, so I decided to look at some other books that I might be interested in, just kind of the recommended books. And I came across Shoe Dog. And I am still reading this book right now. I only picked it up 2 days ago, and I just cannot put it down. It was hard for me to come here and do this video because I just want to keep reading this book about the rise of Nike. And I was especially satisfied because the reason why I picked that one over something like The Everything Store, which I haven't read yet either, is that the 4 things that I read were all about tech companies. And this was about a shoe company. And I thought, oh, this will be really interesting to read something like so far away from what I was reading in the tech space. And it has been incredibly satisfying. I'm really excited to get through the rest of this and figure out where things are going because, man, it is so well written. It's really interesting to see how these things arise. It's interesting to see the economics in there. I'm sure I'm going to do a video on the economics of Nike once I finish this book. I was really satisfied with that, and I think I'm going to be reading more of these kind of not quite business history books. I mean, I guess they're business history, but I really like these books about the rise of different businesses. So if you have a recommendation on which books that I could read in that genre, I would love it if you would put something in the description below. And if you are just coming across this channel, I encourage you to subscribe and check out some of these other videos. And we'll see you on the next time in Market Power.